So I'm sure you guys have seen that most of the Manchester United players are now back in training, and I don't know about you, but they sort of immediately roped me back in. Last season was absolute torture. I hated a lot of them because emotionally they really put us through it. We see one training session, a couple of nice goals, and suddenly it feels like we're so back, and I'm looking forward to watching Manchester United again. Now, from these pre-season training clips, you can't learn too much. Some of these clips are only 2 minutes long. However, I am a Manchester United fan, so I just want to talk about what we've seen, really. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the positioning of some of the players in that training session. Now, of course, we have to consider the fact that certain players aren't there. You know, the likes of Bruno Fernandes, Diogo Dalot aren't with the squad right now. But regardless, I thought there was some interesting positioning from some of the players. For example, Kobbie Mainoo looked like he was very much playing in central midfield in a double pivot rather than further forward. You can see in this clip here, he's actually quite close to Toby Collier. So that kind of strikes me as a double pivot position, whereas towards the end of last season, we saw Kobbie playing a little bit higher, actually as part of the front three. I personally am of the opinion that he should be in this deeper area. I think this is going to suit him much more. Will it continue? We'll have to wait and see. Was he perhaps just filling in to make up numbers? I'm not too sure. But hopefully his future is in this position. Another player whose positioning I found pretty interesting was Mason Mount. There's kind of been an uncertainty over his best position really throughout his career. I think initially under Erik ten Hag he was signed to play as part of the 4-3-3, but he sort of lost his way a little bit. Towards the end of last season he seemed to rediscover his form from the left-hand position, and that is very much where he found himself in these training clips. You can see here on the left side of the attack. And what that means is Manchester United next season are going to have some serious squad depth, because we've also got Cunha, of course a recent signing, making his first training session, playing in that position as well. We saw last season that Kobbie could also go there. We've got Bruno Fernandes who could go there as well. So basically what it confirmed for me is we don't need a left 10 in the transfer market because we've got a lot, especially if we trust Mason Mount there. Although, maybe we do still at wing-back. Speaking of wing-back, I don't know if you guys noticed, but Benito Manato was actually present in these training sessions, but actually partly on the left-hand side. You can see in this clip here, it's actually Manato crossing the ball with his left foot from the left side of the pitch, which is interesting purely because typically we think of him as a right-sided player. For the England national team at youth level, he tends to play at left-back, but for Manchester United last season when we were talking about him, we were thinking he could maybe break through as a backup right wing-back, sort of an alternative option to Ahmad. Still a winger profile, still left-footed, so it's sort of a straight swap. But in this training session, he was very much on the left-hand side. Now again, that may just be to make up the numbers, to replicate what we've got. You know, to replicate Dorgu's left foot or Luke Shaw or Amas possibly. But I thought it was interesting that he was over here. And then the other player that I think we need to mention on the other side of the pitch is the other wing-back, Ahmad. There's been so many question marks over his best position in the 3-4-3. Where does he fit into the system? What's his best role? Well, in this clip here, Shea Lacey appears to be the right 10, with Ahmad a little bit wider at wing-back. Now again, it's pre-season, we can only learn so much. But I just found that interesting because I think that's where a lot of people want to see him. And then finally, the other player was Cunha, who has moments in the left 10, but also in these training clips appeared to be up front a little bit. And with Manchester United struggling to sign a striker in the transfer market, maybe there's something in that. One of the other things that I wanted to discuss from this short training clip was some of the styles of play that we saw, some of the methods of ball progression, and the ways that United were looking to move the ball forward. For example, the up, back and through, which we've spoken about a lot over the past few seasons, that seemed to be fairly evident in this training session in my opinion. It starts off with a ball coming from off the screen from somewhere deep into the feet of Joshua Zirkzee. But what he does is he plays the first time pass backwards, quickly popping the ball. So the up pass was played by the player off screen. The back pass was played from Zirkzee into Kobbie. And then Kobbie's first thought was literally straight away to move the ball forward. It was a quick pass, which kind of tells me that this is something that Amorim wants. These quick movements where you move the ball up, you move the ball backwards, and then you move the ball through. And we can see that through ball here. Kobbie moves the ball forward. It's into Mason Mount in the left 10 position, like we were mentioning earlier. He steps inside onto his right foot and then shoots at goal. In terms of tactically, I think the reason why that's interesting is because it's like United have been trying to build this for a few years. We know the benefit of it. If you get the ball in this deeper position, you move the ball up initially, you can draw people out of position. Because as this first ball comes up, the striker drops deeper towards the ball. If the striker drops deeper towards the ball, the opposition defender is going to follow. But because you then quickly pop that ball backwards, the centre-back is now dragged out of position, and now that through ball can be played to a left 10 or a wing-back. Now, this was something that United looked to utilise quite a lot under Erik ten Hag. We also saw it under Amorim last season, and it's interesting to see these patterns once again being worked on in training. Again, I keep saying it, but I do need to make it very clear. This isn't anything revolutionary. You know, we're not learning anything massively new about the Manchester United squad. But again, I think it's interesting to see that we're working on those patterns. It makes me think about what sort of players we might need in midfield, players that can quickly play the ball forward. Is that part of Kobbie's game, if he is going to play in the double pivot? Is that part of the game that he's going to have to work on, that quick passing, so we can play that role, so we can move the ball forward quickly? It's all stuff that we need to think about in pre-season and as we move towards the competitive season. The other sort of style of player that I noticed in this particular training session and some of the clips was the use of cutbacks. Again, something we saw a lot of under Amorim. I covered this extensively, particularly towards the end of last season. There's a lot of talk about Manchester United crossing last season. For me, it was more about cutbacks, and I've covered a lot of content on that. So go find it on the channel somewhere. You can see Cunha picking the ball up here in the left 10 position, moving the ball forward, wide to the left-hand side, to Manato, the wing-back. As this ball comes in, it's not necessarily a cross. A cross, I would say, is aiming more for a player's head in the air, perhaps someone at the back post. You're looking for someone to win an aerial battle. This ball, instead, is cut backwards more. Now, on this occasion, Joshua Zirkzee does something rather fancy. It looks quite entertaining on this still shot. Zirkzee sort of backheels the ball into the back of the net. But in terms of the idea, the pattern, the thing we're trying to do here, I actually think it was meant for Shea Lacey behind him. I actually think that was the target with this ball, because I think that's what Amorim encourages. We covered this a lot last season, getting the ball in these positions here, wide with one of the wing-backs, and then what you do is you get the striker to attack the box. That drags the centre-backs deeper, and that's when the cutback space is then created for a Cunha or a Lacey or an Mbumo if we sign him, or an Ahmad in this position, Bruno, Mount. There's so many different players it could be. But what's interesting is, you know, the knock-on effect that has on the striker. In that clip there, it was Zirkzee that scored the goal. But I think more typically, the cutbacks don't really benefit our strikers too much, or certainly they didn't last season, because the striker is sort of used as a decoy to take the centre-backs with him. It's that movement from Zirkzee or Højlund that takes the centre-backs deeper. It's key, it's pivotal, it's vital, it makes room for someone else, but it doesn't actually give our striker opportunities to score goals. So that was something that was really a problem towards the end of last season. And whilst it was Zirkzee that scored the goal in the clip, I get the feeling it was actually kind of a replication of last season's patterns. What I would like to see us try and do is, first of all, continue with this, because I think it's a great idea. I'm a big fan of cutback goals. I think they're very, very dangerous. But what I would like to see is a bit of variation, where occasionally, and you know, now we're talking about as we grow into next season, what I would like to see occasionally is, rather than the striker running, making room for the inside forwards, I would occasionally like to see the inside forwards making the aggressive run. So it could be Cunha in the left 10 running forward, taking the centre-back deeper, and then the striker dropping into the space. It's not that one idea is better than the other, it's the fact that if you do both, it makes you less predictable. You've got more variations with your movement in the final third, more methods of scoring goals, which can only be positive for United. So yeah, those are just my thoughts on what we saw in that little training session. I weren't really too sure whether or not to do this video. I don't know if people are interested or not. But like I said right at the start, at the end of the day, you know, before being someone who makes content or anything like that, I am just a Manchester United fan. I enjoy talking about United, and I had these thoughts. These were the first things that popped into my mind when I watched the training session, and I watched it back a couple of times to see if there was anything else, and that's when I came up with the thing about the cutbacks and the up, back and throughs and the player positioning. Let me know though if there's anything that I missed. Is there anything that you saw in this clip, or these clips I should say, that was really interesting that we should take note of? Or are you of the opinion that there's absolutely no point talking about this? Let me know what you think. I'm a football nerd. I like to talk about anything that I can see, because basically I'm obsessed with talking about Manchester United. But if you don't want this content moving forward, I do understand. If you do want this content moving forward, please leave a like, subscribe, get your notifications on, and also leave a comment in the chat. Let me know that you're obsessed like me and you just want to talk about pretty much everything. But that's for the future, really. In terms of actually today, there's only so much we can talk about a 2-minute clip. So we're going to wrap the video up there. Thank you guys very much for watching. Hope you have enjoyed this video. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.